These are the most disturbing cases of people who went missing. JonBenet Patricia Ramsey, also called Johnny, is just a little girl who already competes at beauty contests at the age of 6. But she would win multiple of them, one after another. And she also has a loving family, including her parents and her older brother. But everything would change soon, eventually. It's the second day of Christmas in 1996. Johnny's mother is at home, but as she goes to the staircase, she finds a letter addressed to Mr. John Ramsey, Johnny's father. The letter reads, "Listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign fraction. We respect your business but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on the delivery. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter." Investigators noted that the ransom note was unusually long, more than 2 pages, which is rare in actual kidnapping cases, and was considered suspicious directly in the beginning. Despite the fact that the kidnapper threatening to kill Johnny if they called the police, the parents did so anyway. While the police waited for the call of the kidnappers, the parents searching the whole building for clues. They find nothing, but after 8 hours, JonBenet Ramsey has been found, dead, and even stranger, in her own home's basement. Johnny's father found her body, duct tape over her mouth, and nylon cord was found around her wrists and neck, and her torso was covered by a white blanket. The alleged kidnappers never called. Little to no clues. The police is now interrogating the parents, since the suspicion against them wasn't cleared. Even Johnny's brother Burke was questioned, despite being 9 years old at the time. A ransom note while the alleged kidnapped child is in the basement? The public can't comprehend the logic behind it. The police analyzed the handwriting with the ones of Johnny's parents. For her father John, the handwriting didn't match, but after analyzing the handwriting of the ransom note with the one of Johnny's mother, the results were inconclusive.
As for the ransom note, Thomas says everyone whose handwriting was tested was excluded, except Patsy Ramsey. Not so, say the Ramseys.
There are lots of pieces of handwriting that we have of other suspects that match much more closely than mine does.
We had the note looked at by national experts in handwriting, and they told us the same thing. They said it's a very low probability of comparison that Patsy's writing compares. Very low probability that she would have been the writer.
The police suspects the family, so does the media. But a even more weirdly suspect is in question. Bill McReynolds, a neighbor of the Ramseys, visited the house 2 days before the murder. Similar to the current event, his daughter has been kidnapped in 1974. Weirdly enough, his wife also written a play about a child being molested and murdered in a basement. These similarities concluded in a high suspicion. In addition, Bill has met JonBenet before. He sometimes dresses up as Santa Claus and therefore meets many kids. Also JonBenet. He liked her since she's the only child who has given him a gift, star glitter. After his heart operation, he stated in an interview that her murder was harder on me than my operation. She made a profound change in me. Now many people would say this is extremely odd for an old man to say such things about a little child which is not related to oneself. There were still people defending him, saying he's just a old friendly guy who has a heart for children since he lost his own. He was willingly doing DNA tests to prove his innocence. The results are negative. He's cleared of the suspicion. A major suspect is now cleared, and the media is still suspicious and believes the real perpetrator is inside the house. According to the media at that time, it appears that no one entered the house since it's heavily snowed in Colorado and only footprints led into her house, but none out. The parents are suspected to be the murderers by the public, but there was one problem. the story about the snow wasn't the full truth. It turns out that most newspapers failed to mention that there was no snow at the rear of the house and that the servants' entrance was open when the police arrived. The DNA traces found on the body and the handwriting samples from the blackmail note found in the house did not match any member of the Ramsey family, although Johnny's mother was the only one who could not be definitely ruled out. Another question that got brought up was the amount of the ransom. $118,000. Why exactly this number? Why not $150,000 or $200,000? Why exactly $118,000? The only number matching the ransom amount was the bonus payment of Johnny's father. But the people who knew about it were not a lot. But investigators also suspected that this could be a reference to Psalm 118. Still, it seems like the kidnappers knew how much the parents of Johnny's parents could possibly pay, since only John's close circle knew about it. In an interview, Johnny's mother was asked about if she knew about her husband's bonus, but she stated that she didn't know. The suspicion against the family rises, but there is no real evidence against them. Meanwhile, the parents of Johnny are doing interviews year after the murder, with the latest one being 7 months ago, and the public still critiques their innocence. It's the 16th of August 2006, a decade later after Johnny's murder. A former teacher from Atlanta, John Mark Carr, who was pre-convicted for possessing CP, is arrested in Bangkok, Taiwan. He confesses killing the 6-year-old Johnny. It appears the case is finally getting justice and the name of Johnny's family, including her mother, would be finally cleared. But all the police had was Mark's confession, and this confession was soon called into question, as some details of his statement appeared to be inconsistent with the police investigation of the forensic autopsy findings. His ex-wife also claims in interviews that he was with her in Alabama at the time of the crime. On August 28, 2006, charges against Carr were dropped because DNA did not match from the murder victim. The only suspects are still Johnny's family. The 10th of July 2008, the US Judiciary declares the suspicion for baseless. The attorney's office of Boulder County even publicly apologizes for accusations against the family. DNA testing has proven the innocence of Johnny's family. However, independent DNA experts seriously question the significance of this DNA evidence. But the criticism didn't lead to anything and the case was dropped. Not even a year later, on February 3rd, 2009, the case was reopened by the Boulder Police Department, trying to find new evidence and trying to spend the next 6 years to find the real killer and who was behind the ransom note. Was it really a group of kidnappers or a one-man operation? These questions are unanswered and the police department closed the case again in 2015. The family still denies any suspicion against them and tells that they would never done it and that the evidence shows otherwise, but the public wasn't convinced. Nothing led to who actually wrote the letter, but still people would believe it was the parents, with some even say it was Johnny's brother. Almost 3 decades later, since the horrific murder of Johnny, it is still unknown what really happened and it seems like it will be unknown forever. Even with modern forensic technology, documentaries and endless internet speculation, the truth remains hidden in the shadows. To this day, even after almost 4 decades, people on the internet still hasn't given up the case and are suspecting mostly the parents. Because why is the body of the kidnapped child in her own home? And why is it inconclusive that the mother's handwriting is matched with the handwriting of the alleged kidnappers? And why is the kidnapper writing a long ransom note and being very specific, saying they would cut off her head if the parents would try to get involved anyone else? The suspicion on the forums makes sense, but we have no evidence and the police closed the case, so justice will never be brought to Johnny. Elisa was a regular girl in college. She was living by herself, trying to be independent in life and overall just an overly friendly person to be around, according to her friends. Nevertheless, Elisa was diagnosed with bipolar, so she needed to take medication. Although she was living alone, Her parents knew where she was, and so did her friends. In 2013, friends and family haven't heard about Elisa in a while. They can't even reach her. Although it could be just that Elisa's being busy again, Elisa's family became concerned. It has been weeks without them hearing anything from her. At the same time, something else happened in the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Hotel visitors noticed something odd. The water was seemingly tasting weird. After many complaints, the hotel tried to search for the cause, but would find something that they would never expect. In the water tank on the roof of the hotel, they found a body inside of it, and it wasn't just any body, it was Elisa. As police trying to find out how this happened, they found camera footage of the hotel's elevator, which would be the only last footage available of Elisa. She enters the elevator, presses all buttons, goes in and out of the elevator, but then just leaves. She seemed very hectic, and it seemed like she wasn't alone. With that information alone, it wasn't clear what really happened. Elisa's body showed after the autopsy that she didn't take any. At the end of the investigation, the police declared that it was an accident caused by Elisa's mental condition.
Both the LAPD and the LA County Coroner's Office ruled her death an accidental drowning.
But there are theories that Elisa was the victim of someone putting her in the water tank, even speculating sexual abuse after remarks of blood in her private area. But experts say that it is most likely caused by the water tank, and although both sides are reasonable, a suspect was never found. Elisa's parents filed a lawsuit but lost the case. What happened on that night will remain unsolved and probably still spike debate on who did that. The internet still criticizes the police for declaring the case of Elisa as an accident because of the lack of evidence. So the most plausible explanation is that she climbed in the tank herself, most likely during or after a manic episode because of her bipolar disorder. It's 2004. Alonzo and his friends, who are 23 years old, are attending a party in Kansas, USA. They live in Gardner, but the party was in La Cine. Alonzo's friends drove them there. Arriving at the party, they immediately having fun. They drank, danced a little, and even got high. Close to midnight, Alonzo's friends are about to leave. Alonzo is still at the party, as they leaving him behind him, thinking he has a ride home. Alonzo, as the only black person at the party, is getting into a heated argument with other guests of the party, one of them even calling him a racial slur. But his friends wouldn't even find about any of this through Alonzo himself, and the next morning, no one knows where Alonzo is. No message, no call, no response at all. Everyone is wondering, where's Alonzo? After Alonzo went missing, his family found his boots and his hat near the party at the farmhouse along the road. They believed something had occurred there and asked to search the area. However, initially law enforcement denied their requests, stating they would already search the area and the family would interfere with the investigation. The police said that they would contact the family if they found anything.
We told the sheriff we'd come back out if they wanted us to. We weren't invited to come back out and search again, so we wrapped it up and closed our case part of it.
The police did not end up finding Alonzo or anything that would lead to him, so on May 1st, the family was finally allowed to search the area. And after 90 minutes of the search, they found Alonzo's body.
His body was absolutely not where it is now at the time law enforcement was there.
It doesn't make any sense that a dive team came out, KBI came out, that we had cadaver dogs out. And you've done all these searches before and never found him. But we do a search, and within 30 minutes, we find him.
Caught in a tangle of brush and branches along the bank in Middle Creek, which is only an estimated 20-minute drive away from the party. It is speculated that Alonzo's body was placed in that location where it was found, rather than having been there for the entirety of the search. Even while the police was searching for Alonzo's body, because Alonzo's family and friends didn't dig for his body, they just found it by stepping over it. But how is it possible that the body was placed there between the search of the police and the search of the family? The whole situation raised questions, and the only question right now is, who murdered Alonzo? Many party guests were interrogated. It is said that a girl named Tiffany Boone has been flirting with Alonzo at the party. Other sources say Alonzo has been accused of raping her. The police would also look deeper into Tiffany's family, asking them questions, but nothing really came out of that, and it overall just looked like a dead end. In a forum dedicated to Alonzo's case, a user suggests to look deeper into it, and not only at the family of Tiffany, but rather someone she's close to as well. Someone, and I quote, law enforcement would have a reason to protect. Now, who could this user possibly mean? He didn't give any more info about that. In a subreddit dedicated to Alonzo, there's a post of a user summarizing everything that is known for now and could be relevant to the case. And in this post it stated that Tiffany was dating someone at that time whose name is Logan Smith. Logan, who also went to the party, has a history with violence and racism, allegedly beating up his girlfriends in the past and calling a black person the N-word. But it comes to light that this wouldn't be the reason why the user mentioned Tiffany's boyfriend. His father was Richard M. Smith, also known as Judge Richard M. Smith of Kansas City. The theory is that Logan was the murderer of Alonzo and had help covering it up, but the theory lacks any evident proof. In addition, the autopsy results came in. It couldn't be determined what the cause of death was.
That allows me to make a determination that he was or was not strangled. There's no broken bone, there's no penetration of bone. If he's been beaten, it has not left anything identifiable. Mr. Brooks died. I do not know the circumstances of his death. I do not know the cause of his death, whether there was an accident or whether there was a purposeful involvement in his death.
The investigation led to no one being arrested, the case was closed, and the theory just seemed exaggerated and not leading anywhere. It's 2019. The US Attorney's Office for the District of Kansas and the FBI are reopening Alonzo's case and are rewarding $100,000 to anyone with tips that can lead to an arrest. They exhume Alonzo's body, which leads to another autopsy, which seems kind of irritating since there was already an autopsy in 2004. What could have changed? Well, this time the results are different. It results in finding the real cause of death, homicide. But who was it? We still have no clue who the attacker was and who did that to Alonzo. And why did the FBI, after over a decade, decide to reopen a case that seemed leading to nowhere? It says that Judge Smith supposedly had using his ties for his own benefit, but the name Alonzo Brooks is never mentioned there. Now the theory is more strengthened, but still not proven. It led to more questions and no one will ever know what really happened. Alonzo's family and friends are still searching for answers, although their hope must be weakened since it's already been over 2 decades since Alonzo lost his life. It's the 15th of January 1947. At 10:30 a.m., a mother and a child taking a walk in Los Angeles. They stumble on a young naked woman sliced clean in half at the waist. There wasn't a drop of blood at the scene, indicating that the young woman had been killed elsewhere. That's why the mother firstly thought it's a mannequin. Some of her organs had been removed and she had mutilations in her pubic area and breasts. The corner of the mouth was split up to the ears in the form of a Glasgow smile. This murdered woman was a 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, also called the Black Dahlia. 8 days later, the apparent murderer sends a letter to Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow. The It follows her birth certificate, business cards, photographs, a handwritten address book with many pages missing other identification papers. The procedure of this murder already starts raising suspicion that a professional was involved. The clean cuts, the removal of the organs and the absence of blood suggested that Elizabeth had been killed elsewhere, her body drained and carefully cleaned before being left on the vacant lot. These details fueled suspicion that her killer had professional medical or surgical knowledge. The police tries to interrogate every single one noted in her address book, 75 men, all of them denying a deeper relationship with Elizabeth, saying it only lasted for a short time. Police interrogates in the whole investigation multiple people, but one of them stood out the most, George Hodel. George Hodel is graduating pre-medical school in 1932 and gets his medical degree 4 years later in the University of California. After conducting his medical practice and becoming head of the county's social hygiene bureau, Hodel was moving to Los Angeles by the 1940s, becoming chief public health official for sexual health issues. Hodel would have multiple wives throughout his life and 11 children. One of his children is Tamar. In 1949, his daughter Tamar accuses her father of sexually abusing her. 2 witnesses to the alleged abuse testified at the trial. A third one recanted her earlier testimony and refused to come forward. It comes out in the trial that Tamar had allegedly claimed her father was the Dahlia killer as well. His medical degree and surgical knowledge raised the suspicion. The LAPD are placing listening devices in Hodel's home without him knowing and let them record for 40 days straight. This happens shortly before Hodel left the US to go to the Philippines. The audio files do not exist anymore, but the transcripts are available in the Hodel's files. They heard him saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out. Killed her, maybe I did kill my secretary." Hodel was the public eye, but in 1950, the investigation against George Hodel was abruptly shut down. Besides the fact that there is not physical evidence tying Hodel to the crime, the police states that the recordings of his home eliminated the suspicion against him. A major suspect accused of abuse towards his daughter and murder of Elizabeth. How is it possible that the case struck the potential murderer? While there was no explicit evidence, many things spoke for the guilt of George Hodel. There's someone specific in this case who plays a big part on if George was the murderer or not. This person investigated even after decades of the case of Elizabeth and the potential of George being the murderer. A former police officer working on multiple murder cases and now trying to find the truth. Meet Steve, to be exact, Steve Hodel. That's right, the son of George Hodel, investigating his own father. At the time of the murder, Steve is only 5 years old. He didn't have any evidence, but he was the first-hand source of some things that made his father even more suspicious. For instance, George had a photo album, and in that photo album are 2 pictures of a woman. White woman, black hair, it seemed like to be Elizabeth. George was known for having temporary lovers, and even some witnesses later suggested such a relationship between him and Elizabeth. But still, not explicit evidence could be delivered. But it's not uncommon that verdicts been spoken out on cases with little to no explicit evidence, but conclusive clues and reasonable motives. But how is George Hodel affected by that? Well, as the head of the Los Angeles County Social Hygiene Bureau, Hodel was the top public health official dealing with sexually transmitted diseases, prostitution, and sexual health. This meant direct cooperation with the LAPD's Vice Division, which was notoriously corrupt at the time. Vice officers often protected certain brides or madams who were paying them, and Hodel's position would have meant working alongside those same officers to monitor or regulate sex work. Therefore, George most likely knew about what was going on in the LAPD. Steve claims that the LAPD covered up his guilt to save themselves. Steve dives deep into several authored books he wrote about his father on why he was responsible for Elizabeth's death. The internet and public believed him, but more and more Steve started to lose credibility. Reasons for that is that he's linking his father to multiple more unsolved murder cases. For example, the Zodiac Killer. The majority of his followers starting less and less to believe if Hodel was actually the murderer, with the case being closed by the police, George Hodel's death, and the disturbing murder of Elizabeth. The remaining question on who really killed the Black Dahlia remains unsolved.